Hello, everyone. I'm very glad to be here with director Dash Sean from the film Cryptozoo. Cryptozoo is a very important film in the international competition of the 11th edition of FICUNAM Film Festival. It is also the only animated film in the selection of 12 films. And it's a very particular animated film, not only because of the way it has been accomplished, but mainly because of the issues and themes the film is talking about. So Dash, welcome. Thank you very much for your film, for being here. So welcome to FICUNAM.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you and congratulations. The film has been great in Sundance. I've been reading a lot of excellent reviews. I also understand that you got a local distribution with Magnolia, so congratulations for all of those accomplishments. I would like to begin asking you, Dash, which are the origins of this film? You know, how come you ended up making a political animated film around cryptids? You know?
It was a few things combining all at once. You know, the one was that I love this early cartoonist animator Winsor McCay, and all of his projects I feel like are him doing things that only drawing can do. Like he did the Little Nemo and Slumberland comic strip that's about dreams. Mm-hmm. And he did Gertie the Dinosaur, an early animated thing where, you know, that's using drawing to depict these creatures that we can't see and that aren't with us. So it's like the precursor to Jurassic Park. You know, the magic of drawing. And he had started a short film on Centaurs. It was just called The Centaurs in the early 1900s. It's on YouTube. And he never finished it. And if you watch it, it has a beautiful, I think, kind of sophisticated, like sort of sexy quality to it. And the fact that this master animator had left this work unfinished felt like it sparked my imagination of maybe what that movie might have been like if he had finished it. And so around the same time that I saw that, and I was really excited by him, my wife, Jane, had an all-women's Dungeons and Dragons group. And it was when I lived in New York. And so, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, excellent.
Okay. It was when I lived in New York. And so all of these women from all over the world would come and play Dungeons and Dragons in my apartment, and I would have to leave. So that inspired, I think, trying to write something that Jane would want to participate in, because she painted most of the cryptids in the movie. Oh, and I think it also inspired having a mostly female cast to the movie, and I think also the globe-trotting quality of the movie, because it was New York. The women who played were from all over the world, and often they had just moved to New York and kind of, I think, used this D&D group as like a beginning social circle. And then also at that same time, I had a fellowship at the New York Public Library. And one of the other fellows there was doing a project on counterculture newspapers of the 60s from all over the world. And so it was, and the New York Public Library had all of those papers. So it would be like a left-wing newspaper from Brazil in 1968, and also one from Chicago, you know, of that same time. And it was exciting as a drawer to see those, because so many of them had a similar kind of aesthetic where it was like a thin line, sort of Art Nouveau-y, almost kind of fantasy-ish quality that was paired with, you know, the counterculture of all, you know, all over the world. So you have to think it's before the internet, but somehow a look was connected to the counterculture at that time at a global scale. So it was all of those things kind of mixing and combining, and different interests. The movie took a very, very long time to make. You know, I wrote the script 5 years ago. So, and storyboarded it 5 years ago. So it had to kind of have enough going on in it to sustain all of those years.
Okay, great. And it's a very empathetic film, no? Cryptozoo invites us to think about the other, no? About the other ones. I think that's one of the most remarkable message, you know, of the film. And I would like to ask you, why to choose the cryptids, you know, these mythological creatures, hybrids, you know, and I mean, why to choose cryptids, and what do these creatures represent to you? I mean, this is a film that every one of us can have a meaning, no, for cryptids and that. No, I think that's another accomplishment of the film. But I would like you to talk us a little bit about your own point of view.
You know, sure. You know, for me, they represent the imagination or the mythologies from all of these different cultures. So to me, the important, you know, to make a movie, you know, the important thing about them is that they are imaginary and that they are kind of born from our minds. And that I feel, you know, for a long time, the script had a quote, a Pablo Picasso quote at the beginning that was him saying, "Everything that you can imagine is real." And I felt that that was a powerful kind of thesis to the movie, because it was about taking imagination seriously. So I, you know, for me, a lot of the movie, if it functions allegorically, it functions as the allegory being about, you know, kind of people's dreams or imaginary, you know, ideas, and that everything has to begin in imagination. That you know, this computer that we're using right now at one point was came from someone's mind as the way it was. And it was drawn probably on a sheet of paper of how maybe this could exist. And similarly, how a society operates has to begin in imagination. So the different places all over the world have different imaginations that are kind of informing their culture. So that to me, I feel like is that was where my head was at with it, and yeah.
No, it's great, and yet it's also about. I would like to talk about a little bit about. I mean, you mentioned the dreams, no, and this cryptid that it's like the most powerful and or maybe the main cryptid of the film, Baku. I mean, you know, the government wants to put hands on Baku, so so they can take away all the people's dreams, no? And all the, I mean, all the film, all the story works around this anecdote. So, what about Baku? You know, Baku, from which culture this cryptid comes from, or it's a fictional personage?
All of the cryptids in the movie come from actual cultures, and that was really important to me, that it feel that even though it's a fantasy movie, that it feel very connected to our world. And I think that that's something that everyone, that through the, because you can watch, I wanted it to be very like front and center in the middle of the movie, meaning that you know, it's hard to tell. Anyway, the Baku, I had seen Hokusai had done a drawing of a Baku, you know, in the early 1800s, and you can, and there's a experimental comics anthology called Comic Baku. So I had heard of the Baku, and it felt like a great creature to put at the center of a movie. Because I draw comics too, and a lot of I've made 2 movies now, and both of them have been very like kind of connected to comics. But it's a cliche to say, but it's really true that movies can kind of replicate a dream state. And I think just that like a REM cycle is 90 minutes, and that's kind of how long we want a movie to be. I feel like when I heard about that creature, I immediately thought that's a movie idea, not a comic idea. And that, you know, Jane, when she was designing the cryptids for the movie, she would look at very early representations of all these different creatures. And the Baku has such a, I don't, you know, like for all of the creatures, you can find like a modern kind of Dungeons and Dragons-y version of it, or you can find a very old one, and the older ones tend to our eyes look a little more warm, or I don't know. I was drawn to them, and so I think her painting of that Baku, I really fell in love with that cryptid.
Okay, great. How do you guys work together, you know, with Jane? I mean, it's been great, like all the work accomplished. I understand Jane Samborski, she's the director of animation, right, of the film, so, and the producer, no? And so how do you work together, and how is to produce this film? No? How did you finance Cryptozoo?
Well, we're also married, and we live together. And on high school sinking, our first movie, I was really roping her in and trying to get her on board, you know, making these things with me. But by the time it got to Cryptozoo, she had successfully kind of banished me from some parts of the process and really taken charge. You know, it's quite difficult to have, you know, I don't know your partner life situation, but it's hard to work with someone who you're also married to. So what Jane created was a Google Sheet document of all of the shots, all of the assets. And so when she had a note from me, or I had a note to her about a particular aspect, instead of me talking to her and saying, Jane, I didn't like this drawing, this doesn't work, I would type it into a Google Sheet under that asset. And so we could not have so much arguments. And instead, it would all kind of be mediated by this Google document, Google Sheet. And this saved the marriage, you know, made the movie possible. And also all of the steps had kind of, you know, columns, boxes. So if we had an intern who did something, and over many years, like it would be like they would write their name in at each step. So if I saw a cat hair on a painting, I would think, oh, who scanned that? They did not clean the scanner bed. There's a cat hair on that painting. I could go into the Google Sheet, find the name, and I would say, Mac, Mac 3 years ago scanned it and didn't clean that cat hair. So we would be able to track everyone down for retribution.
Okay, no, it worked. It worked great. And yes, I was curious because actually, with my partner, we also work together in many things. And so
okay.
I kind of understand.
So use this Google Sheet. I recommend it.
Yeah, for many things, yeah, it's very useful. Okay, let's just get back a little bit to the film. Talk us a little bit about the shelter, the zoo. I mean, the Cryptozoo. This sort of facility that is more close to Disneyland or maybe Jurassic Park that you mentioned the beginning.
Yeah, as a cartoonist, I know way too much about Walt Disney, and growing up, especially, I guess my grandfather gave me a book about Imagineering, and it was sort of the first. I think the first, profession I wanted to have was an Imagineer. But I'm particularly interested in Epcot Center was originally going to be an actual city, an experimental city that Disney had designed where people would live. And he died before he got to build it. And then after Disney died, 1966, I think, they begin construction and they make it as just another amusement park, the Disney World that we know, Epcot Center. Yeah, and we see the characters in Cryptozoo. We see the Epcot under construction when they're in Florida. You see, the dome. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, I also made a book called New School that takes place in an amusement park that's under construction. And amusement parks are, they're supposed to be this place where imagination reigns and you're in a dream world. And, but of course, when you're there, it's like an airport shopping mall and you're trapped and, you have to buy, $5, bottles of water and it's not a dream world. And so, obviously it feels like a powerful location for a story. And especially with the Epcot or kind of zoos where it's supposed to be an amalgamation or somehow a summary of the world. Everything I feel like is in the movie where it's sort of an attempt to bring all of these cultures together that doesn't really work out. I mean, it's in the movie.
And in the film, I mean, the park, I think I heard it's placed in San Francisco. That's correct?
Yeah.
And why there? I mean, why in San Francisco?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was because of those newspapers that the 60s underground comics, 8th Street. But the Jurassic Park. Of course, I love the connection to Gertie the dinosaur, and but also something that I love about Jurassic Park that I feel like is not emphasized in that movie is that you know, everyone who goes to see that movie is like paying to see Jurassic Park, paying to see technology used to resurrect these dinosaurs. So you're inherently kind of complicit in this situation of the people in the movie, you know, resurrecting dinosaurs through technology. But because it's Spielberg, that quality is maybe not brought to the front. Whereas in you know, my movie, I feel like it's very obviously sort of just maybe yeah, I don't know. I think probably it's the allegorical content is probably a little more obvious.
Okay. Which techniques were used, you know, in the film for animation techniques? In general.
It all starts off with on drawn paper, pencil drawings, watercolor, gouache paintings, acrylic paintings, and then they're kind of rigged. Like there's a few different, you know, I kind of think of it as a collage movie because there's different parts that are made in different ways. But in general, it's traditional animation that's being composited onto through a computer. So like the creatures, I could hold up the Baku and all of the pieces of the paintings would fit on one little sheet of paper, and then it's rigged in After Effects, and it's essentially stop motion, but it doesn't look like stop motion because all of the pieces have been painted. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Even all the blood that it's in the film, it's you can see like the material, no? I mean that it's hand drawn, and you know and all the details, no, not only the blood. One of my last questions is about the music. Tell us a little bit about the music that you used in Cryptozoo.
Yeah, I don't know that much about music. But as I was working on this, I felt like the movies that this movie was in kind of in the lineage of, like Akira. Like I think Akira is like the greatest movie of all time, and Fantastic Planet. Both of the, I feel like there's the music in those movies is not what you would immediately think would be paired with the picture, but somehow they perfectly align and have some magical, intuitive spark between the two of them that. I'm in Richmond, Virginia. I don't know anything about music. I'm trying to figure out how to score this movie that I'm making. So another person who lives in Richmond is this guy named Rick Alberson, who did a movie called The Mountain.
And the comedy. Festival.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, he was here in Mexico City also, present. Yeah, we know Rick. Yeah. So you're friends.
So he lives 10 minutes away from me. So I called him up, and he knows the label Jaguar, a very cool label here in the States, music label, because Rick also makes music. And anyway, so I got Jaguar on the phone, and I kind of told them about my movie and explained what Cryptozoo was like, and kind of, you know, how I needed to find something that was really new and different sounding, that I can't just, you know, get a normal composer for this thing. And the first person they thought of was John Carroll Kirby. And I had never heard of him before. And he had just put out this album called Travel. And he described it as like third generation exotica. So I listened to it. I thought it was amazing, and I had never heard anything like it. And it was perfect for Cryptozoo.
Yeah.
So then I met him, and then he'd never scored a movie before. I couldn't really tell if he wanted to do it. Then years later, when we had the movie ready for him, we came back to him, and in that time, he had become more well known and made a bunch of other albums, and was kind of he was busy, but the pandemic canceled all of his tours, so he could score Cryptozoo.
Thanks to the
He was
pandemic.
sitting at home. He was sitting at home, so we got him. And I think that score is amazing. I love it. And he said a really beautiful thing after seeing the movie. He said that it felt like him, it felt like it had that it wasn't like a job, I guess, or wasn't, which I think I feel that in the movie. I think that I don't know. I'm a fan of the score of this film.
Yeah, no, totally. Thanks, Sean, for this about these comments about the music, because yes, it's a super atmospheric music, and it really works, and it's very authentic. So I wanted to ask you about that. That will be all the questions that I have, but I also, just to close this session, what is coming next, for Cryptozoo, after Sundance? I don't know if you have already like a tentative release date with Magnolia, what is going to happen? I guess this film will also get a space in an important VOD platform, but I mean, in terms of release, in theaters, do you already have a plan, with Magnolia?
We haven't gotten it all, I don't know where it's landed yet, but Magnolia picked up the US theatrical release, and I don't know when it's going to come out. We're talking about it. It's playing Berlin late, and Match Factory. This company is representing it for all these different festivals. Yeah. I don't. I don't know really. I should, as the director, I should know, but I'm like I'm trying to get the poster looking good and the trailer, and so I don't know yet how it's all gonna roll out. But I'm excited
that you focus on those things.
Yeah. For Sundance, they did these satellite screenings, and it played at a drive-in. So we drove down from Richmond, Jane and Emily, the lead animator, and I all, and it looked great at a drive-in screen, and I think it'll be really fun. I hope it'll get to play some drive-ins. It'll be that would be a fun night for some people. Is your festival in person, or is it virtual, or what?
No, this is our first edition that is going to be virtual. It's the 11th edition of the festival, and yes, this is our first virtual try. Let's see how it works. But the program is great, and I think the audience will be very happy, because now we can get to audiences outside Mexico City, which is good news. We can reach like all the country. Other cities in the country, and that's gonna be good for the festival and for the films. And and that's it. No, let's see. We are, of course, believers of the, of the magic that happens in the theater, in the screening room. We grew up like that. That's our thing. But all the virtual world also has many good things, and
totally. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's more like reading a book. It's a bit more of an intimate experience. So, but sounds great.
Yeah. So, Sean, thank you very much. Really, congratulations to you and to Jane. And I don't know, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.